Welcome to our church, Community Church Unitarian Universalist. I'm your worship associate, Amy Holtkamp, and it's a joy to be with you virtually today. We welcome you and we thank you for being with us. So, who are we as Community Church? We are a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. We welcome all who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of social justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every being. So please take a look in your email for our weekly Community Matters email for announcements and things that are going on in our church community this week. Now we will begin our worship in earnest with our chalice lighting, and it is Community Church's custom to light a chalice invoking hope and eternal truth to our worship. Please sing along at home. And now, some opening words by Pope Francis from Fratelli Tutti. In the depths of every heart, love creates bonds and expands existence, for it draws people out of themselves and towards others. And now I invite Cynthia Ramirez to come up for our Time for All Ages.
Good morning, everyone. This is a story from the Congo in Central Africa. There once were two childhood friends who were determined to remain close companions always. When they were grown, they each married and built their houses facing one another. Just a small path formed a border between their farms. One day, a trickster came from the village, decided to test their friendship. He dressed himself in a two-color coat that was divided down the middle, red on the right side and blue on the left side. Wearing this coat, the man walked along the narrow path between the two houses. The two friends were each working opposite each other in the fields. The trickster made enough noise as they traveled between them to cause each friend to look up from the side of the path at the same moment and noticed him. At the end of the day, one friend said to the other, "Wasn't that a beautiful red coat that man was wearing today?" "No," replied the other, "it was blue." "I saw that man clearly as he walked between us," said the first. "His coat was red." "You are wrong," the second man said. "I saw it too. It was blue." "I know what I saw," said the first man. "The coat was red." "You don't know anything," replied the second angrily. "It was blue." "So," shouted the first, "you think I'm stupid?" "I know what I saw. It was red." "Blue," the other man said. "Red, blue, red, blue." They began to beat each other and roll around the ground. Just then, the trickster returned and faced the two men, who were punching and kicking each other and shouting, "Our friendship is over." The trickster walked directly in front of them, displaying his coat. He laughed loudly at their silly fight. The two friends saw that the two-colored coat was divided down the middle, blue on the left and red on the right. The two friends stopped fighting and screamed at the man in the two-colored coat. "We have lived side by side all our lives like brothers. It is your fault that we're fighting. You started a war between us. Don't blame me for your battle, replied the trickster. I did not make you fight. Both of you are wrong, and both of you are right. Yes, what each other said was true. You are fighting because you only looked at my coat from your own point of view. The end.
Thank you to Peter James for our wonderful music today. While we're going through the process of contracting a new minister, this time is allowing us to be revisited by some old friends like today's guest, Reverend Jim Vanderweil. Reverend Jim Vanderweil, a Midwest native, graduated from the Meadville-Lombard Theological School in 2000. He served as interim minister in Germantown, Maryland, early in his career, and served another interim in Kirkland, Washington, at the conclusion of his active ministry. He was the settled minister at CCUU from 2002 to 2017. He currently resides in Baton Rouge, where he holds membership in Together Baton Rouge, Together New Orleans, Together Louisiana, Climate Reality, the Louisiana Environmental Action Network, Voice of the Experienced, and the Louisiana Power Coalition. He is delighted to be returning to our pulpit today, but I can tell you that I think it would be hard for him to be more delighted than we are. Reverend Jim, I'll turn the pulpit over to you.
Thank you. It is a joy to be here today, and I'm grateful to some people for helping to hold the services together at Community Church Unitarian Universalist. I would especially want to take a moment to thank Cynthia Ramirez, who I've known for a long time, and with whom we walked some interesting days. Cindy Scott, whose music I have always enjoyed and is helping with the music program here, and Amy, who shows up again and again and has really helped keep the services going here at Community Church as well. Thank you to all of you. The question, could Unitarian Universalists adopt a pope, is ironic, perhaps a bit satirical. You use with a pope? Come on. Our spiritual ancestors, the Unitarians, the Universalists, would protest mightily, even to such an idea, even as we too would say, wait a minute, looks much too patriarchal for me. However, Pope Francis is indicative of a change in the Catholic faith, and it may be useful to tap into his energy because it seems to coincide well with many of the views held by Unitarian Universalists. My interest in the story of Pope Francis arose when I watched The Two Popes. If you haven't watched it, please do. The film features a several-day visit by Pope Benedict and Cardinal George Mario Bergoglio, who went on to become Pope Francis. Now, early in the film, Pope Francis shared that he once held an old-school mindset, had views like those of Pope Benedict. But his observations of life had turned him, and he had become a more progressive thinker. He wanted to engage with the people and thought that was a call of faith to be engaged with people. As he said, now I no longer wish to be the salesman for a promise that I cannot endorse. It seems to me that we are no longer part of this world. We don't belong to it. We are not connected. And I am changing. Ah, said Pope Benedict, you have compromised. No, no compromise, said Bergoglio. I am changing. Well, then about an hour further into the film, as Pope Benedict is saying that he wants to leave the papacy, he says, this is a calculation of leadership, a calculation we must both make. Oh, why? For months I've been wanting to resign, but there was one thought that prevented me from that. I thought, what if the next papal conclave, they vote for that Cardinal Bergoglio, for you. But you are here in Rome to see me. And now I've changed. You've compromised, says Bergoglio? No, I've changed. Compromise is something else. Your style, your methods are entirely different from mine. Well, most of the things you say, think, or do are different. But for some strange reason, I can see a necessity for a Bergoglio in the papacy. So, the concept of this message began with the two popes, but it was solidified after I, the only non-Catholic in the group, joined in on a Loyola University discussion on Fratelli Tutti, the October 3, 2020 encyclical letter from Pope Francis. Understanding that we will make some allowances for his use of the word fratelli, brotherhood. I think he means brotherhood and sisterhood. Understanding that, we will take a look at this letter, a close look, in a few minutes. One of the requirements of our service here is that we take a holy time for a look at joys and sorrows. If you have any joys or sorrows to share, please just write them in, and we will light a candle for the joys and sorrows shared by our community today. Elizabeth DeGree Colleen writes that she's sad to see the COVID numbers climbing back up and keeping us apart again, but joyful to have this community and to be taking part in the sacred justice work. Laura Miller writes that a dear friend lost her husband this week. He died suddenly with no warning. Linda LeBon, thankfully my daughter's family is finished with COVID. All are now well. Let us rejoice together. And Jada Alexandra de Clouet shares this joy. I am feeling less depressed and anxious. Hooray for Jada. These are the joys and sorrows that we have today. Let us hold in our hearts the joys and sorrows that we each have as individuals, and recognize, as the Buddha said, that life is suffering. Yes, there is suffering in this life. Section 2. Could Unitarian Universalists adopt a pope? I will be quoting from Fratelli Tutti because it is the best way to share the spirit of its words. When I read this letter, I was gauging my comfort and my acceptance of Pope Francis's words. His letters do highlight, of course, his faith, as they should. He is a Catholic, and he wrote this. Fratelli Tutti. With these words, St. Francis of Assisi addressed his brothers and sisters and proposed to them a way of life marked by the flavor of the gospel. Of the counsels Francis offered, I select the one in which he calls for a love that transcends the barriers of geography and distance and declares blessed all those who love their brother as much when he or she is far away as when you are with them. I intend simply to consider certain trends here in this chapter in our world that have hindered the development of universal fraternity. That word universal. He goes on to consider human regression. Look at the way he looks at this. Regression, human regression, which includes all forms of selfishness, local conflicts, a disregard for the common good which is sweeping across our planet, a growing loss of the sense of history, a deconstructionism in which the spirit of human freedom claims to create everything starting from now, from zero, leading to limitless consumption and an empty sense of individualism. An empty sense of individualism. All of this, he says, has led to a weakening historical consciousness, its diminished critical thought, and an ever-present struggle to find equity and justice. Again, I quote, nowadays, what do certain words like democracy, freedom, justice, or unity really mean? They have been bent and shaped to serve as tools for domination, as meaningless tags that can be used to justify any action. It frequently becomes clear that, in practice, human rights are not equal for all. While one part of humanity lives in opulence, another part sees its own dignity denied, scorned, or trampled upon, and its fundamental rights discarded or violated. The sense of belonging to a single human family is fading, and the dream of working together for justice and peace seems an outdated utopia. And this has led to pandemics, borders, doublespeak, and other forms of subjection. End quote. That's in his first chapter. The second chapter, A Stranger on the Road, is important to us as Unitarian Universalists because it looks at the parable of the Good Samaritan and a model of a person who exemplifies love for all, for every person. The next chapter, envisaging and engendering an open world, contains this nugget. No one can experience the true beauty of life without relating to others. In the depths of every heart, love creates bonds and expands existence, for it draws people out of themselves and towards others. Without charity, we may perhaps possess only apparent virtues, incapable of sustaining life in common. The spiritual stature of a person's life is measured by love. Love takes first place. Love must never be put at risk. Love seeks a union increasingly directed toward others, considering them of value, worthy, pleasing, and beautiful, apart from their physical or moral appearances. Social friendship and universal fraternity necessarily call for an acknowledgement of the worth of every human person, always and everywhere. Every human being has a right to live with dignity and to develop integrally. In the interest of brevity, since I can't share with you the entire 48 or 50 some page document, I'm going to jump to the 6th chapter, Dialogue and Friendship in Society. If we want to encounter and help one another, we have to dialogue. A country flourishes when constructive dialogue occurs between its many cultural components. Popular culture, university culture, youth culture, artistic culture, technological culture, economic culture, family culture, media culture. The dignity of others is to be respected in all cases, not because it is something we have invented or imagined, but because human beings possess an intrinsic worth superior to that of material objects and contingent situations. What you have just heard, my friends, is his sharing of views of the intrinsic worth and dignity of every person, a statement very similar to the fundamentals and foundations of Unitarian Universalism. In a few minutes, after the offering, we will explore the ways his message might be of use to Unitarian Universalists, to people like you and I.
Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a self-sustaining congregation. Members and friends' generosity help us to do the sacred work of bringing justice, spirituality, and compassion to our community and beyond. You can give online at ccuunola.org/stewardship or by text at 504-370-2659, text GIVE. You can also send a check to CCUU at 6690 Fleur de Lis Drive, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70124. Thank you so much for your support.
A couple of months ago, I visited with the Reverend Charlie Ortman. He was here for a number of services several years ago. And Reverend Charlie was raised a Catholic. And he told me that during his ordination service, the Reverend Alan Egley, may he rest in peace, then a Unitarian Universalist minister, had turned to Charlie's Catholic relatives and had said, "I want you to know that everything Reverend Charlie learned as a Catholic will be carried with him into Unitarian Universalist ministry." You know, this insight that all of us arrive in our courage place from other places, and that our childhood teachings get carried along with us, is relevant to keep in mind for you and I today. And I'd like to offer this quick explanation. During the Loyola workshop on Fratelli Tutti, I asked a question. I said, "I am not a Catholic, and I cannot help but wonder how many people read a Pope's encyclical letter." The reply I heard was, "It's rarely read." I find this lamentable, although I must admit I don't read every UU World article either. But perhaps if we read his letters, both Fratelli Tutti on fraternity and social friendship, and his previous one, also commendable, Laudato Si, on care for our common home, our earth, or even his daily reflections, we too, as Unitarian Universalists here, may find inspiration in his requests for us to live a better life, a life of justice, a life of equity, a life of compassion, which is so important to me, a life of fraternity, a life of care for our planet. Are you with me so far? Okay, then here are two requests. First, read Pope Francis. Feel free to quote him in public or to your Catholic friends. Should you hear, if you hear, or when you hear Catholics speaking in conflict with Pope Francis, just mention your Unitarian Universalist admiration for him. Or drop a morsel or two of his wisdom. An online source, if you wish, of daily reflections is per Pope Francis Reflections, Living Water Catholic. I've started to read it. It's a daily item for me. Pope Francis Reflections, Living Water Catholic. Second, and this request will take a bit longer. We all know about the difficulties on this planet. We're aware of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, canals cut through the wetlands, floods, fires, global warming, Formosa plastics, and Death Alley. We know that there are white supremacist, white privileged people, anti-immigrant wall building people, anti-GLBTQIA people. We know about pandemics. But yes, we have a friend in Pope Francis. Put another way, if I go back to my childhood and set this in a theological framing, it might be considered as, what a friend we have in Jesus. Because Francis is tied to the words of Jesus. He tries to live in a manner pleasing to his perception of Jesus, both for the sake of the good of his soul and as Pope to model the love of Jesus to the people of the world. Now, you may recall that Fratelli Tutti began with a look at the forces of human regression the selfishness, the local conflict, the disregard for the common good, the loss of history, etc. But that leads to a change, he asks, of those who will listen to him. I quote, "The path of peace does not mean making society blandly uniform, in other words, confined to the suburbs, but getting people to work together, side by side, and pursuing goals that benefit everyone." If this is correct, then the call is to take some time. Reconnect with your soul. Consider the life you see and ask, what goals benefit everyone? With whom can I work side by side? Where can I build a bridge through dialogue? Perhaps you are already building bridges. I know that CCUU has been very active in building bridges to the local community over the years. And this is wonderful. May blessings walk with you, if you as an individual, and those who you are working with, in dialogue with, for the walk you take together may be a long one. It should be a long one. It's always in process. So this is, finally, the second request. Wherever your bridge may lead you, can you build such a bridge? Can you find some new companions with whom you can be in dialogue? Pope Francis is a friend, a great teacher. At least I found it so. His words, filled with wisdom, flow off the page and are beautifully crafted, delightfully arranged. If you can, please read him and then be in dialogue. So, before we go, and we are nearing an end, it is a delight to be in this Unitarian Universalist community. This is a community that has warmed my soul and brought out of me much of what I have always desired but thought I would never find within a faith community. So please allow me to try to make this clear. I have no wish to convert you or anyone to Catholicism. That's not this. We are delighted that you are here. This is where you should be. Nevertheless, that said, we close with a quote. Not from Jesus, not from the Buddha, Emerson, or Olympia Brown, from Pope Francis. Each one of us is called to be an artisan of peace by uniting and not dividing, by extinguishing hatred and not holding on to it, by opening paths of dialogue and not by constructing new walls. May the love in your hearts find love in the hearts of your neighbors. Namaste and Amen. Our benediction today, also from Pope Francis. Our world is gravely polluted by the way we speak and think badly of others, of society, of ourselves. But complaining and denigrating others corrupts and decays. Whereas blessing restores life and gives the strength needed to begin anew. Go